Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Sudha, and I am the co-founder of Kula Kamala Foundation and Yoga Ashram. We are a facility based in mindfulness, yoga therapy, yoga, and holistic wellness. And we are situated outside of Reading, Pennsylvania, in a small town called Alsace. And today I'm here to talk with you about Ayurveda. So how many of you have heard of Ayurveda before or have studied a little bit? Fantastic, very good. Are any of you lifestyle counselors or health wellness consultants? No? All right. So that just gives me an idea of where to start. So to begin, I'm just going to have us set a little intention. So let's put both feet on the ground, place both hands onto the thighs, and close the eyes. And begin to breathe in and out through the nostrils. Breathing in through the nostrils, you might say to yourself silently, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out through the nostrils, you might repeat silently, I know I am breathing out. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. And then allow yourself with each breath to become more present in this moment, to become aware of yourself, aware of your physical body, all the sensations, the freedom, the flexibility, the restrictions, the stress. Become aware of the mental body, the thoughts, the ideas, the impressions, the dreams, the aspirations. Become aware of the emotional body, the happiness, the sadness, the courage, the fear, whatever there is. Simply be aware without judging, with as much acceptance as possible. And then set an intention inside of yourself that what we talk about today might hold certain seeds for healing, might hold seeds of knowledge and inspiration that you might call on later, that might support your path and your journey through wellness. Drawing the hands together in front of the heart. Together we'll lift our voices in one beautiful Om. Take a nice breath in. Bowing the head toward the heart, acknowledge yourself and all beings everywhere. And then drawing the face back to center. Welcome and namaste. Wonderful. So today we are here to speak about Ayurveda. Ed, I'm going to hand those to you, and if you would hand them out, that would be great. The young lady next to you and the gentleman in the back. So Ayurveda is an ancient science. And as some of you already know because you've learned a bit about it already, the word Ayurveda is a Sanskrit term that translates as the science of life or the science of living. Ayurveda is a sister science to yoga. And yoga is both a series of techniques that are meant to bring about a deep sense of inner peace and unity. And it is the result of that also, the unity in and of itself. Ayurveda is the lifestyle organizing principle that helps to bring about a sense of consistent health, consistent wellness, consistent schedule, so that you can practice more yoga, as in the techniques, so that you can experience more yoga, as in self-awareness and self-enlightenment, coming to know yourself. So Ayurveda is a very ancient practice, potentially thousands of years old, and in the midst of the tradition thousands of years ago, the great teachers understood that humans faced a dilemma, and this dilemma is universal. We all experience it. It's called suffering. Every human being alive suffers. It's universal. The other thing that's universal is the potential for healing. Every human being has this potential inherent inside of themselves. And between Ayurveda as an organizing principle for wellness and yoga as a spiritual practice for awareness, that potential can be reached. But before we go into the slightly more esoteric part of it, let's talk a little bit about how Ayurveda perceives health. What is the definition of health? So we have a mantra. So say after me, and please say loudly, because the more vibrant the words, the more power they hold. Sama,
Sama,
dosha,
dosha,
sama,
sama,
agnischa,
agnisha,
sama,
sama,
dhatu,
dhatu,
mala,
mala,
kriyaha,
kriya,
prasana,
prasana,
atma,
atma,
indriya,
indriya,
manaha,
manaha,
swasta,
swasa,
iti,
iti,
abidi,
abidi,
yate.
yate.
That is the definition of health in Ayurveda. And it translates as the one who is in good health has the balance within the doshas. So sama means same or balanced. So the doshas are the same, they are balanced. The digestive fire is balanced. The tissues and the eliminatory functions of the body are balanced. The person has a pleasant disposition, and the person has a content and undisturbed mind. That's the definition of health in Ayurveda. So we might think, well, I have probably maybe 70% of that down, 60%, 20%, 90%. But I would pretty much gamble that nobody has 100%. The one thing that we all seem to have is a disturbed mind. We have a mind that is disturbed by distractions, by stress and tension of day-to-day living. And in Ayurveda, it's only when those stressors don't lead the way, it's only when those stressors are in an appropriate place, being responded to appropriately, that the rest of this falls in place and we experience the utmost level of health. So how many of you are stressed out on a day-to-day basis? A little? Medium amount? A whole lot? I think most people nowadays in the West, a lot of stress. We have 24/7 access. We have cell phones that send text messages through and let us know when our Facebook is active. We have jobs that require we work 40, 60, 80 hours a week, and we travel some distance oftentimes to go to those jobs. We have families, we have schedules. We have a lot of day-to-day stress that we might not even realize causes us stress. Modern science says stress is responsible as a foundational principle for 90% of diseases today. Stress is the starting point. So if you have more stress than what your nervous system is capable of handling in a healthy way, you have an elevated risk of illness. You have an elevated risk of some type of disease. But what is disease? It's two words, dis-ease, meaning that there is a lack of easefulness, meaning that the mind is disturbed. So when the mind is disturbed, we are moving toward a state of disease. But when the mind is peaceful, then the person is peaceful, and then we are moving toward a state of health. So the doshas, these doshas in Ayurveda, they're called constitutions, but that can be kind of confusing. Basically, Ayurveda is grounded in the principles of the 5 elements. The 5 elements in Ayurveda are earth, water, fire, air, and space. And according to the teachings of Ayurveda, there is nothing in this universe that exists that is not some combination of those 5 elements. So you are some combination of those elements, and so am I. This room, everything in it is some combination of those 5 elements. And when we're talking about people, what we're basically saying is that people fall into one of potentially 3, but up to 6 categories. They are either Vata, which is the combination of air and space, Kapha, which is the combination of earth and water, or Pitta, which is the combination of fire and water. Or an interesting combination of those doshas, like Pitta Kapha, Vata Pitta, or Vata Kapha. If you have a tendency such that your constitution is simply predominantly pitta, meaning that you have a lot of fire and water in your elemental makeup, then you might have a tendency to experience life a certain way, to express yourself a certain way, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. A pitta individual has a tendency, they carry the quality of ambition, focused, logic, competitiveness. They're very straightforward. Sometimes when they're not quite balanced, they might have a sharp tongue. They might have a tendency toward skin rashes. They might have a tendency toward headaches with red eyes. They might be a little short-sighted because they see things in a particular way. When they're balanced, they are your team leaders. They're the ones who see the goal and get it done. They are the ones who have drive and ambition, which can, as we all know, be both healthy or not healthy. When we talk about individuals who have predominantly a kapha constitution, we're talking about earth and water. And so it's a little simplistic, but if you think about the qualities of earth and water when they meet, what do you end up with? You end up with something like mud, which has a tendency to be sticky, has a tendency to be slow, to be heavy, to be full or robust. Now, an individual who has a tendency to have a kapha constitution, their psycho-emotional spiritual tendency will be compassion, love, adoration, and support, because they're strong. They're strong individuals. When they're not balanced, their tendency will be stuck. They get stuck in opinions. They get stuck in resistance. They become stuck in not feeling well, or in the story that they tell themselves or about others. We all do that to some extent, but an individual who has a kapha imbalance will have a tendency to do that more. Vata is a combination of air and space. There is very little fire, there's very little water, and there's very little earth. There's a lot of air and space. And you oftentimes hear people talk about the Vata constitution and relate it to artists, musicians, media artists, individuals who have vast creativity. And bless you.
It needs to be true.
There you have, exactly. Who have a sense of vast creativity, but who also have a tendency, when they're not balanced, to not know what to do with that creativity. Perhaps they feel a little too spacious, a little too connected to the movement of air. Vata is the only one of the three doshas that's movement oriented. So there's a lot of mobility there. Mobility is one of Vata's qualities. Heat is one of Pitta's qualities. And strength is one of Kapha's qualities. And as you all know, those types of qualities can either be helpful or they can be a hindrance. And so what Ayurveda asks you to do on a day-to-day basis is to take a look at the qualities that you're currently carrying. What is your quality? And there are 20 qualities that Ayurveda talks about. Some of those qualities would be things like heavy, slow, thick, oily, unctuous, clear, solid, stable, mobile. And so if we're feeling ungrounded, then we're feeling like we don't have stability. And there's a beautiful phrase in Ayurveda that says, like increases like, opposites decrease. So if you feel cold, what will you do? You'll put on a jacket to get warm, because warmth is the opposite of cold. If you feel unstable, like there's maybe too much air, then what will you do? Something to ground yourself, something to bring yourself to a greater sense of grounding. If you're feeling stuck, what would you do? You would start to move. Start to get the energy flowing throughout the body. So that phrase, like increases like, opposites decrease, is a very important concept in Ayurveda and a very important concept to health, because what it means is seek balance always. Seek balance always. Allow yourself to have a little bit, but not too much of anything. So not too much chocolate, but don't cut it out either. Not too much coffee, but it's not necessary to cut it out either. Not too much of anything, but it's also not necessary to cut it out either. Because the act of cutting things out completely disturbs the mind, disturbs the untrained mind. And most of our minds tend to be a little untrained, unless we've spent some time reflecting on what our tendencies are. So here in yoga we have this beautiful mantra, Samadosha sama agnis cha samadatu malakriyaha prasanna atma indriya manaha swasta iti abhidhyate. That health is defined as this balance, as bringing all functionality of the body to an optimal place, functionality of the emotions to an optimal place, functionality of the mind to an optimal place, where there is little to no disturbance. There's clarity in the mind, there's a sense of upliftedness, and that leads us to a sense of spirituality, a sense of connection, a sense of unity. Before I say much more about unity, I always have to talk about digestion, because that's such an important part of Ayurveda. The concept of digestion in the West is overlooked most oftentimes. And so by digestion, what do we mean? Well, we absolutely mean the way that we consume food, the ability of the body to take that food, to process it, to break it down into nutrients and to absorb it. But even as important is the one part that we're not always comfortable talking about, and that's the eliminatory function. So are we able to have bowel movements on a regular basis, or are we constipated? So digestion, both the taking in of food and the breaking down, receiving the nutrients, the ability to absorb and integrate the food, and then the ability to eliminate whatever was not useful in the body. That is of utmost importance in health and wellness in Ayurveda. So much so that we have cleanses throughout the year that address constipation. Physical constipation happens in the intestinal tract initially, or at least that's what we kind of think. But constipation in the intestinal tract is a direct reflection of constipation someplace else in the body. Constipation in the energetic channels, constipation in the nadis, for those of you who are familiar with that terminology, constipation in the flow of the breath, the way we breathe, constipation in our thinking. Are we stuck in a certain thought, in a certain way of living that is not nourishing to us, not allowing us to absorb the goodness around us? Hence, the body becomes constipated, and then the body suffers. And when the body suffers, so do we, and our mind becomes disturbed. Never met a person who was chronically constipated who was happy. Have you? No. No, they're usually a little grumpy, you know. And what are they thinking about? They're constantly thinking about the constipation. And so, not just the constipation in the intestines, but think about it. I'm sure everybody, I know I've experienced it in my life, where I'm kind of stuck in a rut. You know, I'm in maybe a pattern of behavior and I'm looking for a way to change that behavior. But I'm so stuck in that pattern of behavior that I can't even find a door or a window out. And so I think about it. And because I'm spending so much time and energy thinking about that one thing, I am not thinking about other things that could support an expression of freedom or health or wellness or lack of constipation. So this idea that things get stuck, that stories get stuck, that energy gets stuck, that food gets stuck, tells us that in order to experience health on an optimal level, we need to avoid too much stuckness. Now, what do I mean by avoid too much stuckness? Because there is such a thing as being grounded in a real super healthy way. A day-to-day schedule. In Ayurveda, what we call dinacharya. Wake up at a certain time, eat at a certain time, eliminate at a certain time, practice your spiritual sadhana or your spiritual practice at a certain time of the day, study at a certain time of the day, be active at a certain time during the day, express love consistently throughout the day, go to sleep at a certain time. So being in a schedule, day to day, helps the body. It aligns the internal clock of the body with the intention of wellness and balance. But if one day we wake up at 6, and the next day we wake up at 11, and the next day we don't go to sleep, and then we wake up at 5, and then we wake up at 2 in the afternoon, that's chaos. And that chaos will affect the mind will become disturbed, and then a sense of diseasefulness will set in. Diseasefulness can be something as simple as discomfort. Discomfort that comes through in fidgetiness, moving back and forth when you're seated, or not being able to stay focused on a particular task or a particular object. Fidgetiness, meaning I'm not content. Other things that this inability to maintain a schedule can contribute to is inability to focus on any project and receive a sense of upliftedness from it, a sense of inspiration, a sense of creativity. So if we're constantly darting from one thing to another, how do we ever become nourished by it? If all you ever did was eat food to simply have it pass through your body, you would never receive nutrition. If all we ever do is run through life and never, as they say, stop to smell the roses, how will we ever know what a rose smells like? We won't. But the scheduling in place, the day-to-day scheduling, this dinacharya, is such a gift because it also gives you time to stop and smell the roses. It says, look, you can't just work all the time. And just playing all the time is not always the greatest either, although, we might think it is. We can't sleep all the time. We can't be active all the time. We have to have a time for everything. So there needs to be a time to stop and to be grateful, to stop and to smell the roses, to take a look around us and say, this is the world that I myself have created. And if I have that kind of power to create my own world, then I'm going to create a world that's worth living in, where there are flowers abundantly to be smelled, where the mind is disturbed as little as possible, where I'm behaving in a way, taking self-responsibility, behaving in a way that supports my body, my mind, my emotion, and my spiritual growth. And that's the next component of Ayurveda and health in Ayurveda, is this concept of self-responsibility. It's absent in the West most oftentimes when you talk about health. We have something wrong and we go to a doctor. I'm not anti-medicine at all. I think medicine has its place and they do wonders, wonders. But the pitfall is that it also harms. We go to the doctor and we say, I have this, I need a pill. And the doctor gives the pill and then it should be fixed, yeah? But the problem is it's not. The problem is the pill comes with side effects. And we're not trained as individuals how to pay attention to ourselves so that we understand how to address the side effects or how to affect what sent us to the doctor in the first place through positive diet, positive lifestyle, gratitude, unity, community. We're no longer taught these things. And it's up to us to bring it back. It's up to us to say, there's a place for the prescription, but there's also a place for personal responsibility, because the prescription will only address one thing. You need to address everything. In our life, most diseasefulness comes from a sense of separation, a sense of being alone. This doesn't happen to anybody but me. Nobody understands me. Nobody knows who I am. Nobody sees my specialness, therefore it mustn't exist. But the reality is, everybody is going through that on some level, because everybody is caught up in this Vata type movement that is constantly taking us from one place to the next, to the next, to the next, and not leaving us with enough time in our schedule to really communicate to each other, to talk to each other, to get to know each other, to even have the time to recognize the specialness in each other. And yet that's what our souls crave. Our souls, our hearts, it craves this unity because we did not come from a place of separation. We came from a place of oneness. You were not alone in the uterus. You were not alone in the womb. You were with the mother. You were not alone before that, and you will not be alone after. It's only here in this physical manifestation of the world that we have each created that we look at it and say, wow, I'm by myself. But the reality is we're in a world of 7 billion people, soon to be 8. How can any of us be alone there? So the next component of Ayurveda and of yoga is compassion. Looking at ourselves and at the world that we live in through eyes of compassion. I see you, and I see that you both suffer and you heal, day in and day out. I see you. Not just looking at another person, but also at the self too, in the mirror, looking in your own eyes and saying, I see you. I see that you suffer and that you heal. I'm witnessing your walk. I'm witnessing your journey. And that validation can change lives. At the ashram, we are yoga therapists. We work a lot with mental health organizations and schools. We work a lot with individuals who feel very alone. And one of the first things that we say when we meet them is, I see you. And my favorite line from Avatar, I see you. And they're like, cool, that's great. And the wall comes down a little bit. It may not always come down all the way, bless you, but it does come down. And that provides a little bit of an opportunity for what? An opportunity for healing. An opportunity that on some level, that individual is open to knowing themselves. That individual is open to knowing you. And together, you can walk the path of health and wellness. It doesn't mean that if you adopt everything that Ayurveda suggests, that you will automatically become a super healthy, athletic individual, who can run a 25-mile marathon. That's not what it is. But you will be content, peaceful, non-harming, truthful, non-grasping, content. You'll abide in the ethics of Dharma, of just existing and accepting things as they are. Knowing that there is work to do, but that you don't have to let the work do you, bringing about stress and tension. Instead, with a heart of gratitude, you can approach everything that you do in life as an offering. Make it an offering to whatever tradition it is that you belong to, whatever religion or spirituality it is that you practice. Many times when I'm working with clients, one of the first things they say is, I don't feel connected. I say, well, what is your daily ritual? What do you mean? I wake up, I go to work, I come home, take care of the kids, pay the bills, watch a movie, go to bed, wake up, do the same thing over. No, what is your ritual? Your daily spiritual ritual. What do you do to reconnect yourself? To bring your health to this place where things are running as optimally as they can in any given moment. And they say, well, I never really thought about that. I mean, I go to church on some Sundays. I say, but what is your daily ritual? How do you renew yourself, refresh yourself? How do you connect? And a ritual can be anything from taking a minute before you get out of bed in the morning and stating a positive affirmation to yourself 3 times, to getting up in the morning and doing an hour of meditation, followed by some type of a physical practice, followed by something else. It could be lighting a candle every day. Your daily ritual could be to smile at strangers. Your daily ritual could be anything. Your daily ritual could be everything. From the moment you wake up until the moment you go to sleep at night. Your daily ritual could be your life as an offering. As an offering to what? to goodness, to health, to balance, to realizing your potential, and to allowing yourself to be a guide for others. A guide. In the world today, a lot of people call themselves healers. I don't like to call myself that. I never have, and I never will. I say I'm not a healer. I'm a guidance counselor. I have lived my own life. I've had my own experiences. I've seen what Ayurveda and yoga and all mindfulness practices can do for a person. And I can utilize that knowledge and offer a few tools and empower others to take their journey in the direction that they want to and in the direction that they will. So that doesn't make anyone a healer, it makes them an empowerer or a guide. You can be a guide for every person that you encounter. Can you imagine? How long would you feel alone? How long would that sense of separateness stay with you if you realize that every person that you are not familiar with could benefit from your smile, be nourished by your kindness, be empowered simply by saying hello, I see you. That unity brings about a great level of health because it calms the mind. It says the thing that you fear the most is not real. The thing that you fear the most, you have the ability to conquer, to wipe out, to show it for the non-truth that it is. You have that ability. Nobody else. And then finally, in Ayurveda, the nervous system. You're a walking nervous system. Your nervous system, which is your central nervous system, is your brain, your spinal column, and then your peripheral nervous system, the nerves that innervate your arms, your legs, the rest of your body. And your nervous system has basically two primary functions. The first is that if a tiger walked through that door right now, you'd jump out that window. You would be in a state of fight or flight or freeze, and you would react in a way that you felt would save your life. And that's a great thing that the nervous system does to us. It allows us to consider life as precious and to take the measures necessary to preserve it. However, we live again in a world that's 24/7. We don't sleep well, we don't eat well, generally speaking, and even when we do try to eat well, we still can't be sure. We can only do as much as we can do. And so because we are living such fast-paced lives, we are constantly in a state of fight or flight. We're constantly waiting for the next ding on our phone, the next negative comment on Facebook, the next person to, say something that seems out of line, the next unfortunate circumstance somewhere. We're waiting for it. And therefore, we're not relaxed. Even when we go get our massage, we don't really leave relaxed. We leave a little less stressed. But we don't really leave relaxed because we're still waiting. We haven't trained our minds yet to stop waiting for the next bomb to drop. So we live in this state of fight or flight, and the nervous system, which is such a beautiful structure in the body, it becomes overburdened. It has its own state of homeostasis and its own path to bring itself back to balance, homeostasis being balance. But if you over-inundate it with so much stress, balance seems lost eventually. It forgets, it forgets how to draw itself back to that place of health. The second aspect of the nervous system is the relaxation response. And the relaxation response is simply contentment. It's being okay. I'm okay in the moment. It's okay. I know the boss is yelling a little bit. I know that there's a deadline coming up. I know that, there's 10 other things happening and I've got to pick the kids up by 5 o'clock from the soccer field and then make dinner, but it's okay. I'll breathe. I don't have to react. Instead, I can respond. And that relaxation response in the nervous system is what empowers us to have that responsiveness, that that sense of okayness, even in the face of stress, even in the face of animosity, in the face of anything. So the nervous system has this exquisite intelligence where it flips back and forth as it needs to between these two primary functions. And there are others, but they're complicated, so we won't talk about them today. But then it keeps getting turned on so much. It's like you turn your TV to channel 7 so often, your TV forgets it's got a channel 11. So it only goes to channel 7, even when things are okay. So then you come back and you look at this list and you say, well, health is, the last one, a content and undisturbed mind. If the health of the nervous system is not balanced in a homeostatic state, then the mind can't be either. Because it's waiting and planning and scheming and worried. So what do we do about this in Ayurveda? You know, how do we look at the organism, the being, the human, and say there are these 3 doshas, this Vata, Pitta, and Kapha, and depending upon where we are in any given moment, because they change, you're not always just one thing. You're so delightfully complicated that you're different in every moment, you know? And so how do we stay up with that? How do we keep up with the changes? By consistently scheduling our time for spiritual study, for exercise, for sitting down and eating our meal with gratitude and awareness, for sleep, for whatever our day entails. And then when we feel that things are becoming overburdened, that we step back and breathe. And we say to ourselves, if something needs to change, what would it be? What would bring me to this state of homeostasis yet again? Now, one thing people get a little confused about is they're like, well, I got homeostasis, and then it left. I failed. It's like, no, you don't fail. There's no such thing as failure in yoga. There's no such thing as failure in Ayurveda. There's only experience. And the experience of a human typically is to move in and out of levels of suffering and levels of healing. And you're so complicated, like an onion with many, many levels, that you can be healing on one level and suffering on another in the very same moment. It all depends upon where your focus is. So I often will do a meditation with individuals who say, you know, they feel like they're very much stuck in their pain body. And we talk through the pain body until they find a place in their body that's not suffering. The tip of their finger, the tip of their nose, their eyelash, someplace where they feel absolutely nothing, which is another word for freedom. They feel no attachment. And I have them focus there for a little while. And then bring them back to the place where they felt the discomfort or the pain. And I would say 95 to 99% of the time, the pain is gone. Because they chose actively to focus on something else. So much so that they opened up the energetic channels, allowed circulation inside the body to become more profound, allowed the body to make its own intelligent way back toward homeostasis, allowing themselves to become, in that moment, a healthier person. So Ayurveda is a very complicated subject, and today I'm just here to talk about this concept of health and wellness in Ayurveda. And to do that in a 1-hour session is, well, less than 1 hour, actually 40 minutes, is, you know, it's going to be brief. But that's okay. You have a few things to do now for homework. So your homework, and yes, you do get homework, is set your daily ritual. What is your daily ritual going to be to reconnect yourself on purpose every day to who you really are? It could be as simple as waking up in the morning and taking an extra minute before you roll out of bed and start the day to repeat a simple affirmation to yourself 3 times. I am enough. I am enough. I am enough. It could be getting up and meditating. It could be doing your yoga practice or your Tai Chi. It could be smiling at every person that passes you by, or committing a random act of kindness. It could be making great food choices to the best of your ability. And it could be just saying grace before your meal. Grace is not a religious thing. It's gratitude. It's saying, this food will soon be me. It will soon marry with the molecules of my body. Therefore, I need to make a place where it's welcome and loved, so that it doesn't feel unwanted, separate. And practice compassion. Compassion in the way you treat yourself, compassion in the way you treat others. Avoid harmful acts. Allow your mind to be as undisturbed as possible. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you're never going to experience being pissed, okay? Because I pretty much can guarantee you will. Very much so. It's part of our humanness. But what you do with it, Thich Nhat Hanh beautifully would say, he's got a book on this, the book on anger. And he said, you sit with it and you experience the anger as it arrives. Know what it does to you, how it sits in every molecule of your being, how it arrives in a wave of heat or cold for some people, how it stays with you, what it expects of you. And when it's time to leave, do you allow it? Or do you try to keep it hostage? Hold on to it for fear that you'll feel alone again. Try to let go of the anger in a healthy way. Do what you need to do, dot your I's, cross your T's, do your work day to day, practice compassion, eat healthy, be kind, do good, be good. Swami Shivananda. And then come see us. At the ashram, we do pay what you can retreats throughout the year, and many of those retreats focus on the science of Ayurveda. We do pay what you can cleanses throughout the year, focused on Ayurveda. We're a nonprofit organization. We have many ways that we support our community, including providing healthy meals to local shelters. We're currently co-sponsoring a campaign bringing awareness to human trafficking, all these types of things. And we would love your involvement, whether it's coming to the ashram and being involved there, or in your community. You do it. It's up to you. You want a different world? Make it. Create it. One person is enough to start. My husband, who's sitting over here on the sidelines, he always likes to talk about the 99 monkeys. Anybody heard of that before? 99 monkeys? So scientists found this really strange phenomenon among baboons in Asia somewhere. And one baboon would pick up a new habit. And then another baboon would see it and he would pick up the habit. And if that new habit, that new behavior was beneficial enough, it would keep spreading. And typically when it got to the 100th monkey, spontaneously it would spread throughout the community. So you and I, we're the first monkey. Now we have to spread it to others, and then let them spread it to others, until we get to that point where it just becomes natural to be healthy, compassionate, spiritually invested in a life of goodness, accepting, and inspired. So I'll stop there and ask if you have any questions.
What is the experience anger? Did you say wrote a book about it?
Thich Nhat Hanh.
I'll have to write that later.
Yeah. Thich Nhat Hanh. Yeah.
And when you talk about the contentment, I'm doing a comprehensive yoga therapy training, which is like really strong on acceptance, and I'm struggling a little bit with it, with that part, because at what point the acceptance and the contentment becomes compliance with something that's not working?
Correct.
You know?
It's not about, it's a great, great question. It really is such a great question. So it's not about being compliant. It's about not allowing anger to be what guides you. Because if you're guided by anger, odds are you will end up committing an act out of harm. But if you see something that is incorrect or inappropriate, and you acknowledge its inappropriateness, then you have an opportunity to touch hearts and to start the spread of proper information. In yoga, it's very clear, and in some of the writings in Ayurveda, it's just as clear. They talk about right association and wrong association. Right association is when you are in like-minded company. It's very easy for us all in this room. Let's say we knew each other for 10 years, you know, and we chant together regularly, and we pray together regularly, and we practice together regularly. It's very easy for us in this room to be together regularly and to uphold those principles. But then somebody else comes in, and they come in and they're smoking a cigarette and drinking some whiskey and cursing and telling everybody what a waste of time this is. And, you know, it's out there, right? And then the two choices that we have, maybe three, are one, we can see them as antithetical to our path in life and kick them out, which would be harmful. Two, we can see them as scary, something to be afraid of, and therefore we will say yes, even though we don't agree with them. That's also not healthy. And three, we can treat them with kindness anyway, because we know that that is the only thing that heals, is when we're compassionate. We don't need to agree with them. We don't need to adopt their stance. We don't need to give in or to be compliant. We don't need to argue. We say, this is the way that you see it, but the way you see things will change tomorrow as surely as the way that I see some things will change tomorrow. And I have a lot of students who ask that question, and I say, well, you know, one of the dilemmas of being human is that we always think we have the answer. So when I was a teenager, I was very much an independent. I was like, I will never be a Republican, I will never be a Democrat, I will never be anything but an independent, period. All these politicians. Then when I was around 18, I was a Democrat. Then when I was in my mid-20s, I was Green Party. Then when I was in my late 20s, I was Libertarian. Only to make my way through these things, because it was the principle at hand that I was looking at, you know? So the underlying principle that I was after was the principle of human goodness and human wellness, and how a governmental system could address that, no matter what you call it. But we all do change. And a person who walks in that door, who has anger, just like we have anger, and who has confusion, just like we have confusion, they will change too, but they won't change if you are angry at them.
Yes.
They will not change if you demand it of them. Yes. They will only become more rigid. Yes. So instead, you simply choose. This is not the way that I will choose to see things, but I understand that that's your way of seeing it. So be it. And then you dot your I's, you cross your T's, you do your work. None of us gets out of here without doing the work. You got to do the work. Sometimes the work means picking up a protest sign peacefully. Sometimes the work means writing a letter to an editor. Sometimes the work means holding, community gatherings where people have a place where they can talk openly and freely without judgment. Sometimes the work includes sitting in meditation quietly and facing your own anger and fear about why exactly does that make me so uncomfortable. And then that's what you do. You become content through knowledge, content through wisdom, content through knowing yourself so well that you can allow him to come to know himself in time too, or her, or them. Yeah.
Can I add a little something or ask
Please.
a little something connected to that?
Sure.
A person who feels the other person is wronged, it's hard for them to get past that point.
Correct.
So how would you give them advice? They're hurting. They say, well, it's not fair that they get to do whatever they want. And I'm encouraging this person to just like, well, take care of your own space. Take care of, let this transform into your own.
Yeah. It's a great question.
She's not ready. Is that what it is? She's not ready, or in little bit pieces. I see little pieces that she can, little tiny pieces.
The phrase that they're not ready is really interesting, because it leads to kind of a, well, I'm here and you're here mentality. You're not ready yet. It's not your time yet. Maybe it's never going to be their time. Maybe that's not the issue they're meant to deal with in this lifetime. So instead, I had a student who came to me one time, and she was having a dilemma about a program that she really wanted to start, but she had no resources to start it. And this other person had heard what she was trying to do and got funding and was able to start this very similar program, and she was so angry. So this person is so vain, this person is this, that. I said, well, if you slow down for a moment and try to move out of your anger, is it possible that you were the vehicle for the idea and not the coordinator of it? Is it possible that that could have been your role? Is it possible that what's holding you back is not the fact that this person went and got money to do this, but that you see money as your own limitation, and that now you're carrying a belief that you can't do it without money? Could it be that your dharma in this life is to learn how to live within the ethic of the universe, how to be a support in the universe without judging or blaming? And maybe the support that you're supposed to provide is something other than what you think it is. These are all possibilities. And which one is right, which one is wrong, I couldn't say. But at least if they can start to think about that a little bit. And it's a long conversation. There's a lot more that I could totally say to that. But the one thing that she walked away from the conversation with was, we all have karma. Karma is a form of resolution. It's not a payback system. It means that we all commit actions. We all commit helpful and harmful and every other kind of action, and all actions have consequences, and all consequences must be resolved in order for there to be complete peace. Maybe the consequence for one person is to be less attached to money, realizing that they can make a difference in this world anyway, just by making a difference in themselves. And maybe the consequence to resolve for the other person is to utilize resources in a way that's something other than self-fulfilling gratitude. See, money is not the curse. It's what you do with it. Nothing is a curse. In yoga, everything comes from Lakshmi. Everything comes from the goddess of abundance. Therefore, nothing that is abundance should ever be looked down upon, whether it be money or anything else. It's the human behavior that may be the issue, not the abundance. Yeah.
The love of money.
Yeah.
That's the root of all.
Exactly. So it is 2:38. I do have to end there. I thank you all. If you have additional questions, please stay for the chair yoga program. Ed has some folders there with additional information in it if you would like. And please come see us at the ashram. We'd love to get to know you all. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.